Welcome to The Simple Sophisticate, where in 2014, this podcast premiered. And now in its 11th season, the show continues to focus on the same principles it was founded upon: the art of living a life of quality over quantity. Topics range from creating an everyday life you love living, strengthening mindfulness practices, building a capsule wardrobe, preparing seasonally delicious meals, traveling and exploring France and Britain, and living life to the fullest without breaking the bank, because living well really is quite simple. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, en route, or returning from that dream destination, or sitting down with a hot cuppa or a cafe au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 401st episode of The Simple Sophisticate. And welcome to April, as well as to a detailed Francophile episode. I know last month we talked a bit about the French language in depth, but this episode is all about more lessons, because France keeps teaching me all sorts of things, and I want to share more lessons that France has taught me or continues to teach me about living well. Having returned from my trip in France just about a week and a half ago, I spent just over 2 weeks there, both in Paris and out in the countryside in Bretagne or Brittany. And I would like to share with you 10 lessons that I observed and wanted to pass on to you. I'm excited to dive into them because, as I'll share throughout our conversation today, sometimes we are more ready to understand something, even though we've seen it multiple times in previous visits or experiences, and it finally sinks in, or we finally realize it, or we finally see what it was truly capable of teaching us. With that said, there'll be some lighthearted ones, some serious ones, some food-related ones, most definitely, and this episode's petit plaisir is one that will ensure a deep night's sleep all year round. Stay tuned to discover what exactly that is. All right, let's dive right in to what France continues to teach me about living well. I want to begin with a quote from a travel guide who has traveled all over Europe for decades. And the fact that he acknowledges this, that he states what he states in this particular quote, having seen all the countries in Europe, I have to say, lends credibility to so much of what we're going to talk about today and what I've experienced myself, even though I've only traveled primarily to France in Europe. This is from Rick Steves. He shares, quote, "France is Europe's most diverse, tasty, and exciting country to explore. It's a cultural bouillabaisse that surprises travelers with its varied, complex flavors," end quote. From the rain in Brittany or Bretagne, the dry, hot heat in Provence, the bustle of city life in Paris, the butter in Normandy, and Brittany too, I could go on and on about the specialty delights and signature details in each of the many regions of France, because, as many of you listeners already know who have had the special opportunity to spend time on the terra firma of France, France is full of wonder and deliciousness to savor. To have only remained in Paris is to have seen just one gorgeous, yes, indeed magnificent spectacle at the Olympics, so to speak, because there is so much more, and it's so, as Rick Steves just mentioned, diverse. When we travel beyond the capital of France, we further deepen our appreciation for a country that is diverse, tasty, and exciting in ways unique to each region. Now, this most recent trip was my 7th trip to France. 3 of those trips gave me the opportunity to spend a great deal of time outside of Paris in 4 different regions of France. And I include all of the places that I've gone and recommend as far as, really anything: shops, accommodations, parks, gardens, trails, hikes. I include every single one of those details on my travel guides, which are entirely free. They're always there on the blog for you to visit. Underneath travel guides on the header in the menu on the blog, click that, and then you'll see two big pictures, one for Britain, one for France. Click the one for France, and then the one for France will open up to all the places I've been for regions. So right now you're going to see Brittany, you're going to see Normandy, Loire Valley, Provence, and then one specifically dedicated to Paris. I haven't finished the one for Brittany yet. I've just started adding everything I've discovered and learned, but I will have that entirely done by the end of April. So if you're traveling to Brittany and Paris, Paris is really full right now already because I've been there many times, but I'm going to be adding so many more things to that. And there's a Google map, so you can really see how close everything is to each other and, plan your itinerary. But all of those will be updated by the end of April. But right now, they're updated through my previous last visits and then part of what I saw just this past month. But with that said, with all of my trips, each time I visit France, I am reminded why the French culture resonates so sincerely with both my temperament, but also my predilections as they pertain to my passions and approach for daily life. Over the years here on both the podcast and the Simply Luxurious Life blog, I have written and shared many posts and episodes that include lists of what France has taught me. So each time I return, I'm always making lists of just reflections. So I don't want to lose those memories. I don't want to lose the aha moments because as much as I think I'm going to remember them, you lose little glimpses of it. And so I always try to journal it out and then I share with you what I feel might be something you'd be interested in. So I'm going to refer to all of those that I've done in the past in the show notes at the bottom of the post under similar episodes or posts you might enjoy. So if you were looking for even more lessons and ahas discovered in France, be sure to stop by the show notes, the simplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 401. And I'm going to try not to repeat myself today. There might be some deepening of some of those concepts, but most of them are brand new today because I do want to go beyond what we've chatted about before. And as I mentioned, this most recent trip, just for context, I always tend to bookend my trips now when I go to either country, Britain or France. So I'll spend a few days in Paris, and then I spent a full week in Brittany, and then I came back and I spent 5 more days in Paris. And it went really well as far as how jet lag was handled and making sure I got my lost luggage because my luggage was lost. I had a really, really tight connecting flight getting to Paris. I was really surprised I made it, let alone my luggage. So I wasn't surprised, but my luggage came within 36 hours. So, and I was still in Paris. So they drove it to me and it was fine. Anyway, so let's dive in. I have 10 lessons I'd like to share with you. Number 1, rushing is really unnecessary and actually depletes life of its pleasure. So here's a quote from Christian Louboutin about the prioritization of France's 2-hour lunches. Quote, "In France, you cannot not have lunch. If you stopped the French from having lunch, you will have a second revolution. I can tell you this, not going to work. It is part of the French privilege." And I'm going to reference that cultural practice, the 2-hour lunch. But I also want to talk about driving because, as I mentioned, I was in Brittany. And just if you've never been to France, Brittany is really very similar with regards to location in the country as to where I live. In America, it's in the northwest region of France, sits right there along the Atlantic coastline, but also the English Channel. Anyway, so let's talk about driving. So as a driver in France, they have a point system. And so based on how many points you have, you want more points rather than less points. This determines your qualifications to drive. The system has a total of 12 points. However, when you're a new driver, you only begin with 6 points. And this is from the website that explains exactly these rules. I've included that link. It says, quote, "If you don't commit traffic violations, you will get 2 more points every year and reach 12 points after 3 years. And then you just don't want to get any infractions. You don't want to be caught, on speeding cams on the highways or anything else because that will just take your points away that quickly. If you commit a traffic violation in France, you may lose points. So one way to lose points, as I just briefly mentioned, is to get caught on the highways or auto routes by a speed camera going over the posted speed limit. Now, these cameras, so they don't have, as we often see here in the States, a cop waiting or, sitting on the side of a highway using a radar gun to see how fast you're going. No. They just take a camera, just like we do at stoplights or, intersections here. And if you're going over the limit, you'll see a big white flash. And that's indication that you were going over the limit and you're likely to have your points reduced. Now, with that said, by the time you see these cameras on the right side of the highway, it's too late. You can't slow down. It's not like seeing a car, yards and yards in front of you and slowing down and trying to, sneak by that police car. No. These things are not necessarily hidden, but they just kind of are. They just blend into the environment. You just don't know they're there. And I passed a few of them. So just go the speed limit. But why I share this is because upon renting my car, and this is the third car rental I've done in France, and I rent cars in England too when I go out the countryside. It was a 2-hour drive from the train station, which I knew. I took a train to Rennes, and then I drove 2 hours to my cottage, which was on the northern coast or close to the northern coast of Brittany. I was on the road quite a bit. And then I also took a chosen journey to Parc Botanique de Haute-Bretagne, which was a 2.5-hour drive away and actually really close to Normandy. So I actually went into Normandy for a short moment and then it went back into Brittany. But my reason I'm saying this is because I was on the road quite a bit, on autoroads, on highways, on small roads in the countryside, and I started to observe some trends. And some different ways of driving that were consistent but slightly different, but also some that were very much the same in here in the States. And one of them is that most people just aren't speeding. In America, it's like almost everybody's going over the limit, it feels like sometimes on highways and freeways. But here, no. There might be that one ding-dong that does. And, whatever. But honestly, I was driving in the middle of the week, during rush hour sometimes, but mainly just during the middle of the week and the middle of the day. And everyone's pretty much staying at the speed limit. And so I just really enjoy driving there. The key thing is just as long as you're under the speed limit or at the speed limit, the camera is not going to flash. And every time I drove by one, it never flashed because I'd already kind of knew about this from my previous trip. Sharon Santoni actually taught me about this because we drove around a little bit in Normandy. And I have driven by one and had it flash. This was my first driving trip. Wasn't going much over the speed limit, but I remember it flashing, or I think I told somebody it flashed, like, oh yeah, that's because you're going the speed limit. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's great. Nothing happened that I know of. The rental company never got a hold of me, but that's my point, is there's really no reason to rush. Why stress yourself out about knowing or wondering if your points are going to be taken away? So back to this whole general point of rushing. Rushing through our days is antithetical to living life in the present, because we are wanting to be somewhere else that we haven't arrived at yet, and therefore we cannot be here if we want to be there. So whether you have a long car ride or commute or a long day at work, savor each aspect. Even if it's not ideally where you want to be. I mean, I want to be where I'm heading. We all do most of the time. But it's part of that whole analogy we talk about with life. Enjoy the journey as much as the destination. When we live consciously, we're aware of how to make that ride as enjoyable as possible. If we have a long day at work, we can make sure, with preparation beforehand, awareness of what we're going to have to do, we can make it as enjoyable as possible, savoring each aspect. Do what you can to make your workday pleasurable, or make a drive a chance to slow down and listen to your favorite podcast or playlist, or simply be with your thoughts without interruption. And when it comes to lunch, back to the quote that started this off, if you can, stretch it a little longer and stick with that. Don't let someone intrude and say, oh, can I borrow a minute of your time? Can I have an appointment during your lunch? And especially if all you get is about 30 minutes. I know teachers usually get maybe 20 to 30 minutes for a lunch. Protect that time. Do not let it be eaten up with meetings and whatnot. You need that time to rest and recoup. And especially if you have a short lunch and you can't change it, stretch it, or wiggle it, then whatever you plan or schedule to do or have to do right after lunch is over, try to do whatever you can to make it something that you can ease back into the work energy schedule or the flow as much as possible. In other words, don't have a big stressful appointment. Maybe make it so, yes, you're back in the office, you're available, but the appointment or the meeting isn't for another 15, 20 minutes. So you can prepare, catch your breath, whatever you need to do. It's this awareness of what your needs are and honoring that. And when you can take a longer lunch, when you can be a bit more luxuriant, as that would appear very luxuriant here in American culture, to take a 2-hour lunch, do so. And don't feel guilty about it, because that's the rushing part. If we rush through our lunch, if we rush through our day because we don't want to be there, we want to be someplace else, then we're never fully present. And that is the key component, one of the main key components in living a life of contentment. So let me say it one more time, because it is worth reminding that our American approach is not the only approach to lunch. Okay, we may not be able to change because we may not be the boss, right? But take that long lunch when you can get it, and do so regularly if it's available. And do not apologize and do not feel guilty. A 2-hour lunch was very common in both Brittany and Paris. You either popped into their business or their shop or their restaurant, whatever it was. Obviously, restaurants were open up till about 2 o'clock for lunch. And then they close at 2. I was very typical. And then they typically open back up at 7 o'clock for dinner. So they have a 5-hour break. But you either get into that business between 10 and noon, or you're going to have to wait until 2 o'clock. And even if there's a line of people standing outside a shop, they do not open it up until 2 o'clock. They really honor what is their announced, clearly communicated lunchtime. So what we prioritize reveals where we invest our energy, and thus whether or not we are living well. Prioritize a pace that nourishes you. Prioritize savoring. Prioritize your personal life as much as your work life. And don't try to squeeze it in when you can actually just simply be a little more, strong in the sense of saying, no, this is my boundary. You're going to have to schedule next week or later this week, because you know what you can do so that you can do your job well and have peace of mind when you go home. All right, so that is number one. One of the big lessons that I consistently saw repeatedly over and over again: rushing is really unnecessary and actually depletes life of its pleasure. Number two is Mother Nature's geography is a wonderful personal fitness trainer. So each morning while I was in Brittany, I would find a new trail along the coast or along a beach to walk. And at 2 different beaches, I saw the same thing taking place by some of the locals. French people in full body wetsuits walking horizontally in the water along the coastline, and the water was hitting them about waist height. And they were walking, parallel to the coastline, so back and forth, so that the water was always the same height. And no doubt this was a great resistance training workout for the full body, as well as a wonderful aerobic exercise. They would walk steadily back and forth for about 30 to 45 minutes, always in pairs. There was always at least 2 people together. One time I saw a group of 4 going out to the ocean, all again wetsuits. I mean, it was March, so the temperature was about, I would say, low 40s. We would wake up and it would be high 30s. And again, I was in the coast, so we got some warm days, but they didn't get any higher than, say, 50 degrees. It was a common sight. And it's such a great idea. And it was right outside their doorstep. So no going to a gym was necessary. Similarly, the trails were abundant in Brittany along the coastline. And I know they're also not just on the coastline, but elsewhere in Brittany. There's so many walking and hiking trails. And many of the locals were obviously walking, but many of them were walking with their dogs. And this prompted me, of course, to stop and chat with many people as best I could. Most of the trails do not allow bikes, as they do here in Bend, which was very nice, because then you were comfortable to walk without a cyclist at your heels. There are a lot of cyclists in France, as you might imagine. I mean, goodness, it's the home of the Tour de France. But they are always on the roads. And there's a lot of small country roads. And these are cyclists of every age. I saw young, I saw older, all different ages. And they were wandering all over the countryside and all different fitness levels too. Of course, if you live in Paris, it's less about Mother Nature geography and more about the city geography. But as one of the members who joined us for a dinner in Paris, who lives in Paris, shared, and she's lived there for a handful of years now, you don't need to go to a gym. You're walking all the time. You get a workout just by living your life in Paris. And I know a lot of people who live in cities that are walkable like Paris can say the same thing. One day I discovered, because my phone, as many of our phones do, have, walking distances, whatever. One day I realized I'd walked over 8 miles. I didn't even realize it. I was tired by the end of the day, but it was broken up, right? You walk to dinner, or you're walking to the museum, or you're walking through the museum, or you're walking to the metro, and then you get to sit and rest. So it's all broken up. So it didn't feel like I had been walking a terribly long time. And another day I realized I'd walked 7 miles in the city. And every day I had at least walked 2. And so I was there for a full 8 days on the ground, broken up, as I mentioned at the beginning, bookending my trip. And one thing I noticed in Paris, that there were also abundance of runners. Oh my goodness, so many runners. Now, granted, the Parisian Marathon is just around the corner. Actually, it just took place. Sorry, it had just taken place while I was there in the middle of my trip. So that might have been part of the reason there was a lot of runners. But I imagine it's pretty a year-round common fitness pursuit. And as well, with all the designated bike lanes in Paris now, there were so many commuters on their bikes going back and forth in all different outfits. And some of them were doing, obviously, a workout on their cycle, so they were in their fitness wear, but some were obviously in their clothes for work. But I noticed, just comparably to when I was there 25 years ago, so many more both cyclists and runners. I didn't see, the only people I saw running 25 years ago were the firefighters. Now it's completely different. So very much so, France provides the reminder that either in Mother Nature in the countryside, along the coastline or whatever, or in the urban design systems in the cities, there's an opportunity to get a great workout regularly without ever stepping into a brick and mortar building and paying a monthly fee to work out inside. This is something that I am so grateful to be able to do here in Bend. And France really mimicked that for me. And that's another reason why I just so love it. Anyway, so that's number 2. Mother Nature's geography is a wonderful fitness trainer. Number 3, quality and, if possible, local ingredients make your food delicious and cooking far easier. Here's a quote to ponder. The flavors melted in my mouth, warm chocolate and melted butter and the flaky sweet crust. This was what I loved about France, a keen appreciation for the simplicity and sweetness of life. The French seem to savor their minutes along with their food. End quote. This is from Melanie Dobson. The first stop that I made when I arrived in Brittany, after dropping off my luggage at my cottage, was the supermarché. So very similar to maybe a Walmart that has a grocery store. So quite large, because they also had clothing too and home goods and stuff. Fred Meyer's. Fred Meyer's is a great one, a great example here in the States, here on the West Coast. But I popped into an Intermarché at Perros-Guirec and picked up my essentials while being in awe of the abundance of cheese, seafood, butter, or we would call it French butter, but butter, you name it. If it is often found in a U.S. specialty food market, it was simply in France's traditional supermarket. Oh, it was just kid in a candy store, right? Much of the produce, such as the onions, lettuce, and other veggies, were from local farms, and the seafood, of course, was from right there in Brittany. Also, the butters were those from towns just down the highway that are known the world over for being the best in the world. Truly a dream locale for a food lover. That first night, I had salmon with a simple lemon butter sauce. On another night, I made myself spaghetti vongole with clams. And because there was a local outdoor fresh produce market, so a farmer's market is what we maybe call it here in the States, open every single day somewhere in the region. So every town had one every week. And so based on what you wanted or needed, or your schedule, the towns are not that far apart. And this is throughout France. This is the case. We talked about this when I went to Provence. This is the same thing. There's always a market somewhere. And I ended up going to 2 different markets at different days. And no matter how small the town is or large, They have their own marché once a week. And I picked up fresh lettuce. I was so tickled that they had one of my favorite lettuces, mâche. It's the most lovely, buttery, fantastic lettuce. They had that everywhere I went. That was very common. It's a winter lettuce, typically grown in winter, early spring. Of course, they had fromage. They had all sorts of different peppercorns, seafood, sausages with hazelnut. Hazelnuts are very indigenous to that region. Very, very similar again to Oregon. So hazelnuts are are indigenous to us here too. So they were everywhere in everything, in their sable cookies or biscuits. And of course, there was farm fresh eggs. So I was picking up my everyday essentials because I would always have breakfast and dinner at my cottage. And then I would have lunch sometimes when I was out and about. So my meals were very simple, but they were very delicious. Again, like I mentioned, quality and as local as possible. They were not complex, but they were always flavorful and satiating. All right, so that's number 3. Lesson learned and applied. Quality and, if possible, local ingredients make your food delicious and cooking far easier because it's so simple. Number 4, don't forget the salt. In other words, season your food while you're cooking it and make it a salt from Brittany. So here's a quote to ponder from Mary Lou Weissman. Quote, I have been in Paris for almost a week, and I have not heard anyone say calories or cholesterol or even arterial plaque. The French do not season their food with regret. End quote. And it's so true. And the whole reason that this is possible to not think like this is that you're eating real food straight from the source most of the time, local most of the time, and it satiates you because they season their food. They're not afraid to use salt. This is something that I really hit on in the last cooking season of the Simply Luxurious Kitchen. Is seasoning is so important. It's not so you taste salt. We're not talking about that. That means you've oversalted or you don't have very good salt. Usually you've oversalted. What you're doing when you season salt and then sometimes pepper is bringing out the natural flavor in the food that wants to be shared with you. And once you taste what that food really is, and thus the more local and the more in season, the better, thus the more flavor, you're going to be satiated far more quickly and consume less calories and be truly nourished. This is such a simple concept, but one that we sometimes don't know how to achieve in our cooking, partly because we need to have quality salt. And again, I'm going to just introduce you right now to the salt that I use and love, and I stocked up on it while I was over there, but you can buy it here in the States, and I've linked to the places here on the show notes. So Brittany, their fleur de sel from Guérin, is renowned for its high quality, its delicate, flaky salt that is harvested by hand from the salt marshes in Guérin, which is in South Brittany. I was in North Brittany, but it's sold all over the region and all over the country. In fact, they had it in bowls in the middle of our cooking stations at Cordon Bleu, because I went to Cordon Bleu and took a class in Paris. They had it there. I get the fine fleur de sel, or the fine sea salt, but there is coarse as well. And it was pretty much available in any shop that I went into, and it's very inexpensive, very inexpensive. This is, you're seasoning the water for the pasta, you're seasoning your meat, you're seasoning your vegetables for roasting. All of the salt and pepper is placed on the food while it's cooking, not after. That means you haven't seasoned your cooking. And I don't mean to go on and on about this, but it just changes your food immediately. It's where you go, this is what was missing, something so simple. So, as I mentioned, I stocked up while I was there, but when I'm not there and I'm out, I purchase the same salt. I actually purchased it on Amazon in a big tub, and I've linked to it on the show notes. But there are all sorts of different varietals. And I also have flaky sea salt. That's for finishing. Flaky sea salt is for finishing. And that'll add a big kick really easily, really quickly. You don't need a lot of flaky sea salt. Point is season your food. Don't forget the salt. The more you taste your food as you cook it, so you start adding just a little bit of seasoning, taste it, add a little bit more, taste it, so that it's never too much. Just gradual. And then, like, for example, when I cook my eggs every morning, I know exactly how much salt I'm adding every morning because I've done this thousands, literally thousands of times. So I know exactly now how much of that particular salt to add to my eggs to make sure it's not too salty, but I had the full flavor of the egg. So just have fun, but buy that quality salt and it'll make a huge difference. Again, I've linked to it on the show notes, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 401. Number 5, chasing more money only leaves you perpetually chasing happiness and never actually experiencing it. This point overlaps a bit with number 1, which we talked about with regards to rushing. Basically, what we're talking about here is refraining from taking a busman's holiday, so working on your vacations, but also not working longer hours or shrinking our lunch break to accommodate clients or customers. Now, this will sound sacrilege to many of us here in the States, whether we are a customer's always right, right? That's the motto in the States, or a worker, a business owner. If we are the owner or a worker at a business, we're used to, accommodate the customer at all costs for the most part, because this is what we've been accustomed to, and we never want to pass up an opportunity for a sale, essentially. However, yet again, this reveals at least 2 worrisome defaults: living with a scarcity mindset and wanting more than we have without appreciating all that already is. Now, I know we all have to pay our bills, and sometimes we are scraping by, and any little extra effort or additional hour might help. But generally speaking, whatever takes away our peace of mind or takes away our inability to stay present, calm, and thus be able to make the best decisions for our life, it's not worth our expenditure of giving more than we are able to give. And only we can know that when we really know ourselves. Often we learn it through having given away too much, and we realize, oh, yep, that was an energy drain, or yep, I wasn't able to show up to my family or my friends or to my whatever it was that you love doing to be, to foster what is core to your livelihood with regards to social connection or health even. And then we realize, okay, that's a boundary I need to put into place. We all learn this lesson differently. But when we set clear boundaries, live within our means, and become aware of the constant barrage of marketing coming at us, we can then begin to find the strength to step back from always being available, as well as limit our exposure to the endless advertisements, especially during the times of day or life events or whatever we know to be times when we are susceptible to being influenced to purchasing what they are selling. And we, upon reflection, know that it would not be a wise decision. It would be a reaction, not a response. So our happiness really will soar beyond just the surface, because a lot of the times those purchases, as we've talked about before and has been, revealed in studies, purchasing something may give us a momentary, temporary high, but it's never going to last. What is going to go beyond the surface is investing in our well-being, building that quiet confidence. And that's a unique recipe for each of us. That's why self-knowledge is crucial. And no marketer will ever be able to define what is going to nourish our well-being. Being a critical thinker and being aware of advertisements and how and what they're trying to do. Not that they are bad. We're not saying, oh, they're bad. They're doing their jobs. They're doing their jobs well. We then have to take responsibility to think clearly enough to know, okay, am I going to be susceptible to this? Is this helping me? Or can I just know to go there when I know I need something? So how can I get rid of advertisements? How can I not watch advertisements or see them or be exposed to them so that I can be more at peace and not feel that I'm lacking? So that's number 5. Chasing more money only leaves us perpetually chasing happiness and never actually experiencing it. All right, so I have 5 more life lessons that France continues to teach me that I'd love to share with you on the other side of our sponsors for today's episode. I'll be right back. This episode is sponsored by Cozy Earth. The goal of Cozy Earth is to help you create a sanctuary within your home, a refuge from the demands of the outside world. They understand the significance of finding comfort and tranquility in the midst of our hectic lives. When we prioritize sleep, we start days well and we have better nights. Cozy Earth's luxuriously soft, temperature-regulating sleep essentials transform our nights into blissful respites of peace. Because when you sleep well, you live well. Now, I had the opportunity to receive a couple products from Cozy Earth. They sent me their bamboo pajamas. And not only are they stylish, timeless, they're navy with white edging, but they are super cozy, lightweight, and they're designed to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. So when I returned from France, these were waiting for me, and I needed some good sleep. And it was still very chilly here in Bend. I wore these pajamas to bed, and I have had such wonderful nights of sleep. Soft on your skin, hangs well, and they're, like I said, they're very stylish. The bamboo sheet set as well, and are some of the most luxurious sheets you'll ever own. Invest in sleep that restores, refreshes, and revitalizes. And they have a risk-free comfort guarantee. If you're not sure if you love them, take 100 nights to decide with their sleep trial. And every Cozy Earth bedding product comes with a 10-year warranty. As a simple, sophisticate listener, prioritize your sleep and visit cozyearth.com using the Simple Sophisticate's exclusive code SIMPLE for 40% off their best-selling sheets, towels, pajamas, and more. And if you get a post-purchase survey, let them know that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on the Simple Sophisticate. Sleep better with Cozy Earth. Visit cozyearth.com and use the promo code SIMPLE for 40% off. The Simple Sophisticate is also sponsored by Indeed. Whenever I have a last minute hiccup on my site that requires something being fixed behind the scenes, I need a web tech and I need them quick. I need to be able to trust that they know what they're doing and that it'll be done swiftly. That's where Indeed has come to my rescue. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there are no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for the results. How fast is Indeed? In the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. Listeners of the Simple Sophisticate podcast will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/simple. Just go to Indeed.com/simple right now and support this show by saying you heard about Indeed on the Simple Sophisticate podcast. Indeed.com/simple. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Welcome back. Let's dive right into the list of the lessons that France continues to teach me. Number 6, stop letting politics consume your life if your job is not in politics. Stay knowledgeable, yes, but compartmentalize and go about living your life well. So the French brilliantly demonstrate this skill as they compartmentalize their life from the blustering chaos of the government news that here in the States seems to surround us in every facet of life, whether on social media, news programs, newspapers, or even and especially conversation. Don't get me wrong, the French shake their heads and grumble. They know what's going on. But then they start to talk about the life that's right in front of them, the people, the food. Food is a big conversation. The weather, the arts, and they are present with what is right now, the task at hand. And if you know French culture at all, you know that they engage most vigorously for different causes. So this is not to say that you aren't aware, so that you are ignorant. You are aware, but you compartmentalize to conserve your energy and engage with the life that you have direct control over right now. I took a few moments to watch the French news on a few occasions during my trip, just to check out the headlines on French newspapers and magazines as well, and get an idea of the tone of global events. And while I, of course, didn't have long conversations with friends, the French locals, because my vocabulary needs more advancement to have those kind of in-depth conversations, I did talk a bit about politics, for example, with taxi drivers. It was insightful and varied, just as people are, but also put into context of the time, history, and world at large, just expanded that bubble of awareness. The stress and outrage, not nearly as on the surface as the news encourages its readers and viewers to be seemingly every moment of the day here in the States. It was just different in a wonderful way. And for that, I say thank you, France. We could all take a lesson from knowing when to engage and expend our energy and when to get on with life and do so for our well being. So that's number 6. Food for thought there. Again, really depends on your personal situation, your work, your what is affecting you directly. And that's the important part, just awareness of that, and how to engage constructively. All right. So number 7, don't forget the baguette in the morning, and make it a traditional baguette or baguette traditionnelle. Each morning, boulangeries open up quite early in France, and in the small villages, this is the case as well, to become available for locals to pick up their daily bread, literally. For €1 and 20 centimes, I would pick up a traditional baguette and bring it back home to my cottage or my apartment, and know that I could have a tartine for breakfast paired with my egg. Now, the egg part is not a traditional French breakfast. They don't typically have eggs in the morning, but that is my must-have, and I knew that, so I made sure I had those in the kitchen. And then you have your bread for dinner or lunch as well. I didn't usually need to pick up a baguette every single day because it was me in the household, but I always got a full baguette, and it would definitely last me for a couple days. And the key here too is to know which baguette to buy for the reasons of longevity, because they are freshly made and there are no preservatives in the bread. There are some though that dry out very, very, very fast, and that would be the blanche baguette or baguette blanche. That will become hard as a rock within a day. But I always knew to pick up the traditional. I tried a few others as well, but I knew where to go whenever I would run out of my baguette. Sometimes I would just pick them up at the market, the marchés that I mentioned earlier in our conversation. There are many different types of baguettes, as those of you who know your food, French food well, or travel there or live there. And while you will pay, just like I mentioned, 20 centimes more for a traditional, it is absolutely worth it. And here's why. A traditional baguette consists of simply flour, yeast, and water, as well as salt. There are no additives to a traditional baguette. And so you're paying a little bit more for that, but it's worth it. Like I said, 20 centimes, maybe 50 centimes. But there's a wonderful post I'm going to share with you from a French learner, and he breaks down all the different types of bread and baguettes for you if you want to learn more about them. So that's number 5. Don't forget the baguette in the morning. Now, I'm trying to do that here in Bend. When we're off season with the markets, there are two places to get them. Sometimes this one bakery doesn't have them in the morning. They just arrive in the afternoons. So a different approach again culturally, because in America, it's not something we typically do, get baguette in the morning. But I find I love having a fresh, warm baguette in the morning if I can find it, and I sometimes do. All right. Number 8, welcome a simple, fresh cut flower, just a single bud from the garden inside to brighten the home. So if you visited Monday's motivational post on the blog, there was a photo captured in the cottage that I stayed at in Brittany. And on the dining room table, the small little cottage table, there is a single camellia bloom, because outside the cottage there were oodles of camellia shrubs and they were just full of blooms. It was that time of year for them to be in bloom. And she had thoughtfully placed a bud in a bud vase there on the table. And it was just everything. I saw this at bistros and brasseries as well. And it just served as a reminder that bouquets do not need to be fancy, nor do they even need to be purchased. The key is to show thoughtfulness and to welcome Mother Nature inside our homes, our sanctuaries, and celebrate the everyday as well as the season. So the blooms will convey the season. I mean, when I got home, some of my daffodils were in bloom. And I've been bringing those daffodils in right now. I have a small little bouquet on my desk with my apricot whorls, my daffodils called apricot whorls. And again, it conveys the season, it celebrates the garden, and it's just so simple. Anyway, so just a reminder, less is more, seasonal is powerful, very grounding, very soothing. Anyway, so that's number 8. Welcome a simple fresh cut flower from the garden inside the home to give it a bit of brightness. Number 9, be prepared to figure it out on your own, whatever that it is, and relax, because you will be able to do it. So, case in point, I have an example for you. I was departing. So I was finishing my time in Brittany. I was at the train station, had all my luggage. I was at Rennes and I was returning to Paris. And I had brought some of the groceries that I had in my refrigerator because I would have had to bin them or throw them out in my rental. And I was like, well, I'm going to stay in Paris for 5 more days. I want to keep this great cheese and these eggs, this cheese, this olive oil. I just had all these things that it would have been hard to track all of them down quickly in Paris, and they would have been more expensive, and I didn't want them to go to waste. So I'm like, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to bring them with me. So I just put them in a grocery bag, and it was an extra piece of luggage, I'll admit, and not well packed. I will also admit that. So I had an extra bag with me, and we were all waiting, as you do, for the gate to be announced to know where you're going to go, like what platform you're going to be on for your train to arrive. And I've been waiting there for a while, and I was standing next to one turnstile, but I didn't know if that was a turnstile. I had no idea. Happened to be the turnstile for our particular gate to Paris. So I was the first one in line, had my ticket ready to go on my phone, my QR code. And I turned to do the QR code, and my luggage tips and the grocery bag goes up. You know where this is going. It's not as bad as it sounds, though. Nothing broke, wonderfully enough, but it all splayed out over the floor. People couldn't get past to get through the turnstile. Laughing at it now. I was pretty calm in the moment, I have to say, because I just was like, nothing broke, thank goodness. And I just shoved everything aside. Got out of the way. And so that happened. Anyway, I share this because my focus was entirely on just getting out of the way. I was not asking for help. I was not expecting help. I had caused the problem. I had poorly packed. I had tried to bring more food to my next place and not waste it, but I didn't pack it well. So that's on me. But anyway, so at the time, I'm just, like I said, concerned of getting out of the way so they could keep going to go to the train. And arriving in Paris, I get to my apartment, which, as I shared on Instagram, I stayed in a Paris Perfect apartment. And they have greeters who greet you and welcome you into your apartment. And this particular greeter, she lives in Paris full time, but she's from England. And I shared with her this story because we were talking about, I can't remember. Oh, I was talking about the food that I brought because I said, oh, yeah, I brought some food from Brittany and everything. I was like, oh, and I hope it, and it definitely went on a journey. And so I shared with her the journey. And she immediately said, the French didn't help you, did they? And I didn't really think about that, but I paused for a moment. I said, oh, you're right. No one actually did lean down to help me pick things up or push them over or ask me if I was okay or anything. But I didn't generally expect them to. And here's why. Like I said, I should have been more prepared. It was on me. And they were trying to get someplace that was very clear that they needed to get there. I mean, there's only a certain amount of time, as we know, to get to the platform. Now, granted, it's a lot of hurry up and wait, but you never know. So I totally understood and didn't expect help and actually didn't need it. Like I said, I was pretty quick. I got it out of the way. But I thought that was very interesting because she shook her head and didn't seem to be surprised when I told her the response. I simply just didn't want to be that tourist. I was already that tourist by bringing groceries with me. No one else had a bag of groceries, and I didn't want to be more of that tourist. So that was what was going through my head. Because I will say, any time I would ask for help on anything, the gas station, at the train station, anywhere, and I genuinely mean that, anywhere I would ask for help and I would speak in French, they were happy to help me. And very, very over the top helpful, more than I expected or imagined, but always was so grateful for what they offered. But back to being prepared that you will need to figure this out on your own, and you absolutely can do it. At the train station, there were clear tasks that I needed to be able to do. Make it through the turnstile with my luggage with ease because I wasn't the only one who was taking the train and needed to board. I didn't do that. I did not succeed at that responsibility, and I knew well in advance that was my responsibility. So I had the freedom to ride this train and the train to go where I wanted and needed, but I also then had the responsibility to be prepared and figure out how to make the most of this opportunity to have that freedom. I admit I temporarily failed at this last bit, but I quickly recovered. I just kept waving to the lady behind me. I said, avance, avance, avance. In other words, go by me, go, go, go. And they happily did once my food and luggage were out of the way. They actually stopped. They didn't try to, walk over me. All of this is to say that the French have their life to live. And if we want to come visit their country and enjoy all that they have to offer, they have no reservations against that. They're very welcoming, but they're not going to bend over backwards to do what you should have done to prepare yourself to be there. And that can come in the form of, knowing at least some French, just the basics, to be polite, but also to ask questions, to get help. This is great life advice for figuring anything out at all. Freedom, so the freedom to travel there, to visit this amazing country, but also the responsibility of being prepared with the skills that you're going to need to enjoy it to its fullest. Now, this is not to say to not bring groceries with you, just pack them better. Anyway, freedom paired with responsibility. Be prepared to figure it out on your own and relax, because you will be able to. That's number 9. And lastly, number 10, I want to end with this one. Savoring a fête au gras matin regularly is a very good idea. So what is a fête au gras matin? There really is not an English a translatable version of this, but just generally speaking, it is to have a leisurely morning, to sleep in, to permit yourself to savor the morning with ease. This is that lingering in bed as the sun wakes up the day, to remain in your favorite cozy pajamas and relax into the morning without rushing or demands, to savor your breakfast, maybe even enjoying your breakfast in bed. However your morning will be best enjoyed, to lower your heart rate and increase your pleasure, remember to indulge in a fête au gras matin from time to time. I did this quite regularly on my trip, and it took some time, right? So part of it is you're only there for a certain amount of time, so you want to make the most of it. But I consciously chose the countryside so that it would be easier for me to relax. And I did do that. I mean, there were some beautiful mornings in Paris because we had some beautiful sunny days. And that sunrise shining off the limestone in the Place Dauphine. Oh, it's the most gorgeous thing to look at as you're waking up and just looking out the window. And I just laid there and looked at that for, so much longer than I might have in the past, because I was just like, Shannon, no, just savor this. Savor this. Had a nice breakfast, my baguette, and then just eased into the day. I mean, this is really not an extravagance. This is not a random, occasional thing. Make this a regular thing. Make this a regular weekend thing. Make this a regular Wednesday thing if you can with your work, depending on what your work schedule is. Whatever. Find the gift in this easing into the day in a way that you can toss aside guilt, because there's nothing to feel guilty about if you know that you are going to get done what you need to get done. You're going to be productive in the way that you need to be productive so that you can be nourished. This will help you feel that way. This will help you feel nourished so you can know that everyday life is something to savor, not just the holidays, not just the vacations. I enjoyed one of those days here this last Sunday, actually, and it was lovely. I just kind of let my energy flow with what I wanted to do and needed to do. Some time outside, some time on the sofa, sometimes reading, some time working and writing. Yeah, it was lovely. So that's the 10th and final lesson. I mean, there were so many. I mean, this episode would be hours long if I went on. So I'm going to stop. I've already gone on far too long. So France has demonstrated that it is a continual teacher of how to live well, savoring the present moment and everyday life, that when we thoughtfully curate a life that pays attention to the details, that makes it endlessly delicious, literally and figuratively, we discover what it really means to be alive. A quote to ponder from author Marcia de Sanctis. We love to slow down, and France requires us to do so. In France, we find what we are missing, end quote. And to that point, it is when we start to know what it means to really be alive that we start to get in touch with all of our senses. Just as DeSantis, who is also a travel journalist, shares in that quote, we might just realize what we have been searching for all along. How to live a life of contentment. For me, that wake-up call first ignited when I first visited France for the very first time in 2000, so 25 years ago. And gradually, with each visit, with the many lessons taught, living simply luxuriously began to be realized each and every day, more and more consciously throughout the entire day until I fully woke up. And I wish for you to make the same discovery about your own life journey, how you can uniquely savor every single day, knowing you are both giving what you can uniquely give to the world while also nourishing yourself. France may not be where we call home, but it often wakes us up to how to make where we live a home, a life we love living. Now, to find the show notes for today's episode, visit the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 401. And just a reminder throughout this month, so it's a lot of style and packing details I'm going to share in the outfit post this month. I'm going to share what worked for me. So much did. I'm so tickled. It actually was a really positive packing experience. Some clothing items I absolutely was so grateful I had with me. It just made the trip a breeze and an ease. I'll be sharing all of that. I believe it'll be on the 9th, so a week from today, on the blog in the Style Inspiration post. If you want to be alerted to that, and aren't signed up for the Style Inspiration newsletter, which is free, you can sign up for that newsletter on the blog. Just click newsletters in the upper, I believe it's the right-hand corner, click newsletters, and it'll take you to a page where you will see all the different newsletters, and then you'll want to sign up for the Style newsletter. And then just also know that in the couple moments that it was shared yesterday, I shared a lot of video, a lot of my walks, both in Paris and in Brittany, to the museums that I went to, the places that I went to. I share a lot of glimpses of those videos on the couple moments for April. But come August, during our 10th annual French week, the second full week in August, it's going to be August 10th through the 17th. So many posts will be shared that are inspired from this trip, detailed posts of how to get around, where to visit, how to visit. I mean, everything that I can possibly share with you that'll make your visit, your trip, your experience more pleasurable, as well as just welcoming the French culture into your everyday life wherever you live. That is all going to be shared during French Week in August, and I cannot wait for this year's event. You can check out the past posts of the French weeks on the blog. I provide the link on the show notes, so you can take a look there. And don't forget about the travel guides. All right, I'll be right back with this episode's Petit Plaisir. So this episode's Petit Plaisir is one that I picked up another one of these on the trip this year or this last month, and it's to sleep on vintage linen sheets. I have talked about this since 2018, but I've never chosen it as a petit plaisir for reasons I do not know. And I chose it as a petit plaisir because they really are inexpensive, especially when you pick them up in France. And I was just blown over by how inexpensive they are, especially if you're not in Paris, which is another reason to go out in the countryside. Now, I've written about this, so I'll link to the post about the history of linen and all the different positive qualities of this fabric. But I sleep on linen year round, and I have been doing so since 2008. I'm not talking linens, because we often in America hear the word linens, bed linens. No. That's typically cotton or some kind of satin, silk mixture or polyester. No. Linen. You want linen sheets. And they're becoming more popular and more available here in the States. However, you want high quality linen. And vintage linen sheets are fairly thick, but because they're vintage, they're already quite softened and worn, but they are still very well made. I have sheets that I picked up back in 2018 that I'm still sleeping on. And again, I sleep on them year round. So I went to a handful of brocants and brocant antique shops as well, brocant fairs, but also shops. And this one place in Brittany had this sheets. It was beautiful. There was a handful of them. I went through them. You want to open them up, take a full look at them, make sure there's no stains, because sometimes there are, and sometimes it doesn't matter if there's a stain. To be honest, it really doesn't matter. It just depends where it is and what you're using the sheet for. And this one had beautiful embroidery. I have a picture of this sheet and the top half of the sheet so you can see all the detail. It was gorgeous. 25 euros. I mean, you never want to dry these in the dryer. I always line dry them or dry them out in my house if it's in the wintertime. I never put them in the dryer because that wears the fibers out. But it honestly, surprisingly enough, keeps you cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It seems impossible, but it's because of the breathable fabric. And I have never gone back. Anytime I sleep on cotton sheets, I have an okay night of sleep, but nope. I'm always glad to come back home and sleep on my linen sheets, or if I'm in France, because I have slept on linen sheets in France, not this trip, but I have in the past. Highly recommend it. So you can sometimes find them on Etsy. Make sure they're linen, not cotton. Sometimes that's miscommunicated or miswritten, or misunderstood in the description. And again, high quality. I picked up some good high quality ones, brand new ones from the White Company. When they go on sale, they're Santorini sheets, high quality, beautiful edging, very simple but beautiful edging. But the ones I picked up at, say, for example, Pottery Barn, they've worn out very quickly, not high quality. They are less expensive. So often the price will tell you, but not always. Like I said, 25 euros. So yeah. Cannot recommend it better for a wonderful night's sleep. And especially if you're someone who's going through hot flashes and whatnot, or perimenopause, these sheets are beautiful. They breathe. They're fantastic. Again, keep you cool and keep you warm. Anyway, so linen sheets from made in Belgium or France. If you're picking them up in France, they're probably made right there in France or made in Belgium. But they're also made around the world. Anyway, I'll provide a link in the show notes to my detailed post about linen sheets. But they are definitely a petit plaisir and a simple luxury that you can bring into your everyday. I hope you've enjoyed this episode's Petit Plaisir, where ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each episode where I'll recommend a book, a film, a show, a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And again, there's going to be much more French content from this trip throughout this month and again in August. And I cannot wait to share it with you. If you haven't already become a top tier member, I have exciting news. The once a year annual sale on top tier memberships. This is permanent savings. As long as you keep your membership active, that includes pauses, this price will be your price. That is starting tomorrow, Thursday, the 3rd, running through the 6th of April. I'll be sharing a special coupon code through the newsletters. So if you're signed up for the weekly, the monthly, or the daily newsletter, you'll get the promo code and use that, sign up, and you'll be able to access all the exclusive content, which includes my travel diaries. I posted 2 detailed travel diary posts in March for this trip, detailing everything I did, where I went, what I saw, a lot of photos. And then, of course, the couple moments. You also get to enjoy the blog ad-free. You get unlimited views. You can view everything you want ad-free. It's wonderful, as well as enter all the giveaways during French Week and British Week. British Week is coming up next month. So again, that once a year top tier membership sale starts tomorrow and ends the 6th of April. You can email me if you want more information, but the simplest thing to do is sign up for one of the newsletters, weekly, monthly, or daily, and you will get the promo codes directly sent to your inbox. All right. Have a wonderful start to this brand new month. And I'll be back with a brand new episode on the 16th. And we're going to talk about memory and how to strengthen our memory at any age to live a wonderful, long, and cognitively sound life. Bonne journée. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, visit the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, with the shortened URL tsll.co or thesimplyluxuriouslife.com. For more in-depth exploration of how to cultivate your own unique, simply luxurious life, pick up my new book, which became both a bestseller and #1 new release in France Travel, The Road to Le Papillon, Daily Meditations on True Contentment. Available in all 4 formats for your preferred reading or listening. My first book, titled Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, and my second book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, are also available in each of the 4 formats. Readers can now join the more intimate The Simply Luxurious Life international community by becoming members of the blog, which offers the benefits of ad-free reading site-wide, unlimited access and exclusive access to content on the blog, such as the monthly A Couple Moments with Shannon video chat, tours of my home Le Papillon, the monthly What Made Me Smile post, and monthly Ponderings post, as well as the exclusive opportunity to enter all of the giveaways during the annual French and British weeks. To stay caught up on all things Simply Luxurious, the podcast, blog post, the cooking show, and receive exclusive news, as well as an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart each new month, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Live's free monthly newsletter, arriving on the last day of each month in your inbox. There is also a weekly newsletter, which is also free, and arrives each Friday to keep you caught up on the recent weekly posts on the blog. Enjoy with a hot cuppa or cup of morning coffee, and stay in the know about all things Simply Luxurious. Look for 2 new episodes of this podcast on the first and third Wednesday of each month. And until next time, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Thank you for tuning in. Bonne journée.